Welcome back to the Telosive EV podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Randy has returned, although he is not the head of marketing of any EV startup I'm aware of, unless he has announcements to make today.
we're all, anybody in San Diego, if one person, we're all one and the same. So
You're representing them today.
I'm representing them today. Do you feel like you well, actually, let me rephrase it like this. How close are you with Aptera?
We need that meme of the two cars that are like a centimeter apart from each other. Yeah.
I have an EV story. I need to jump into this really quickly before you even answer that question.
Okay, yeah.
It's very important. I will forget.
There,
Pause,
I answered it.
and then you can answer. Oh, close? Okay, close. I met a Telosive EV channel fan in a grocery store parking lot.
What?
I met a fan of Telosive EV.
How did
I heard you?
I'm just saying, like, how did they recognized you from the podcast? I'm assuming
they didn't know who I was, which was the weird, cool part, because he was talking about you, and I was like this.
Wait, okay, you got to walk me through the chain of events here.
Yep, this was like, I need to tell you this from the offset.
Okay.
I went to a grocery store. He actually may very well be watching or listening to this podcast because I put him onto the podcast now. So, Steve, I remember your name, Steve. Hi, Steve. Shout out, Steve.
All right.
I go to the grocery store and I'm driving the Performance Model Y.
Of course.
And I just park in the back. I don't even try to go up front or nothing. I just I'm not dealing with all that. I just park in the back and I'll just walk up. Sure. When I park, I get out of the car. There's this guy, he's loading up. I saw a Tesla just across the driveway from me, but I wasn't paying much mind of it. But I hear it's not too often you see Performance Model Ys around here. And I look up and I'm like, and I notice he has the exact same color, and he actually has the exact same. He has the exact same everything I have with the Model Y. He got his last year, and I was like, oh dang! And because first thing I look for is the red, the red brakes, and I'm like, oh, I was like, hey, we're a club within a club. He goes, oh yeah, absolutely, and he asked me a question, and
I just thought, you ever seen Telosive EV? No, he probably wouldn't do it that way.
He's like, yeah, we're a club within a club. There's this guy Telosive, and he goes, well, I call him Drew.
No, how did it actually unfold?
So we get talking. I approach him because I'm like, oh, hey, I was like, oh, yeah, we have the exact same blah, 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 because he asked me something along the lines of, I think maybe how old my car. I don't remember. We very quickly established we have the exact same. I think even to the month, we have the exact
key
same.
Cards are interchangeable.
Yeah, we're basically like siblings now, and so we're talking about EVs and very quickly just how we were talking, because he had said words where I was like, oh, this guy actually knows the EV space. He knows the communities and he knows the space, because he's saying words like he's like, I'm waiting for the Juniper refresh. Papa. He's like, I feel like I bought my car too soon. Now I'm kicking myself. And I was trying to give him peace of mind. I was like, buy when you're ready, because you will always be behind regardless. And so we just start talking, but he's saying things where I'm like, oh, so you actually you're about this. He's like, oh, I'm a big Tesla guy. I sold an older Model Y for the one I have now, and now I'm thinking about selling this one to get the Juniper refresh. I'm mad how cheap they've gotten, but it is what it is. And he's like, I'm in all the forums, communities, talking. He's big Tesla stock guy too. And I was like, oh, okay. So He was saying all the things, and then I had mentioned, because then he was like, he said something along the lines of, here's where now you get brought into it. He's like, oh, and it's not just Tesla. Like, I like the whole space. Like, have you ever heard of Aptera? And I paused, and I immediately, I was like, or like Tello. He's like, oh, Tello too. Have you heard of? And and I was like, are you aware? Have you? Well, first I was like, I paused. I'm like, I'm very aware, and I kind of smirk. I'm like, okay. I was like, I'm going to be honest. I was like, I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't been completely upfront with you, but I'm going to just whatever. Like, I'm actually heavily
I'm a celebrity.
I'm like, I'm heavily in the space, is what I told him.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, me too. I'm like, it's like, no, I actually like, I pause. I go, I do YouTube, and he's like, yeah, me too. I'm like, no, I mean, like, I'm one of the first. I'm one of the first people who documented and saw the Cybertruck that didn't have a reservation invite. I actually, like, in the wild, I'm one of the first. But no, that part I'm embellishing. I didn't say that part. But I was like, I'm actually in the space, and he's like, yeah, me too. And I go, so you talk about Aptera, and he was like, yeah. I was like, are you familiar of and he paused. He goes, and he's like, do you know Taylosive? And like, are you familiar with the channel Taylosive? And I smirk. I'm like, okay, so I'm not completely upfront with you. Not only do I know Taylosive, but I know Drew. And he's like, oh yeah, Drew says, I know Drew too. And I'm like, no.
He slept in my house.
he's like, yeah, I know Drew too. Like, no. I mean, I paused. I'm like, I was like, this is so weird. And like, I could call him right now. I didn't do that, but I was like, I paused. I go,
I could call him right now.
I'd call him right now. So no, I paused and I go,
that's funny.
I pivot, like, you know Taylosive. He's like, yeah. I watched Taylosive, and that's how I know about Aptera. And I'm like, so do you know Mike? And he pauses. He almost like a little bit confused. I was like, Are you aware of the podcast? And he's like, I didn't know he had a podcast. And I'm like,
oh, I'm not doing my job promoting it enough, I think.
he's like, I didn't know he had a podcast. I'm like, so you don't know who Mike is? He's like, no, I Drew, right? His name's Drew. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I know. I've seen his content on Aptera, and I watch his Cybertruck coverage, and I see his Tello thing. And I pause. I go, yeah, you're subscribed. He's like, yeah, I'm subscribed. Like, the thing, like, that's me. And he's like, what? And he's like, I'm like, the music you hear. Of course I know him. He's me. I'm like, that's my doing. And he pauses. He goes, oh, are you? He's like, wait, I'm confused. I'm like, we have a whole separate podcast. And I'm one of the co-hosts of the podcast, but like, I was like, you don't know you don't know the podcast? I was almost offended. How do you know? Like, so do you watch Tales of Tech? Wait. You watch Tales of Tech? He's like, I don't know. No. He pulls out his phone. He has an Android phone.
That's good.
He's a guy.
That makes me feel good.
He does not know Talos of Tech. He has an Android. I'm like, oh.
I've discovered that too. I've noticed a lot of people don't know about the other channel.
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of cool because the moment he's like, yeah, and he pulls out his phone to go to YouTube to show me his thing, and I see it's an Android, I'm like, he doesn't know Talos of Tech. No, I could tell you're not his demographic. And he's like, no, Talos of EV. He's like, his car accident. Yeah, you know, if you heard about his, that's how it started. That's how it started. He goes, have you heard about his recent accident with FSD? Because we were talking about FSD. He goes, I know a guy. Yeah, I'll tell you in a second. He's like, I know a guy with FSD. Have you heard about this story about it drifting? And I was like, oh no. Yeah, you don't know who I am. That's kind of cool. Like, I like being humbled.
Good.
I like being humbled and remind me that I'm just a person. I ain't crap, and that's cool. But also, how do you not know me if you know Taylosive? Like, I'm the thing. I'm the thing of the thing.
You wrote
and
the thing.
Anyway, so we start talking about the accident, and he was like, "That's just terrible." He's like, he's like, I don't want to butcher his thing, especially if he's listening, but something he didn't agree with how the community was responding, and he also he's a big believer in FSD, but he doesn't like it right now, and he's more level-headed. I thought he was going to come for you, to be honest with you. I was ready to fight. I thought he was going to come for you, and he was like, "Oh yeah, no, the guy, like it sucks what happened. That should not have happened. It's very unfortunate it happened. I don't like that it happened. I'm a believer in FSD. However, it's not where it should be at this point in time with everything that we know about FSD." And he was definitely, my takeaway from that part of the conversation, he was more sympathetic. He was showing more empathy than any of the tweets I saw. Yeah, Steve, thanks.
You're the real one.
Yeah, that's so funny. But yeah, Drew, I think you need to promote our podcast more, because he looked at me like
I'm hoping having Chris McCammon on helped.
That'd be cool.
Now, if you're into Aptera, we had the head of marketing on our last episode, so at least more Aptera fans should be aware of the podcast. But
when I had talked to him, that episode had not came out yet. Just
okay,
that out there.
It was a while ago.
So it was probably, I don't know when you recorded it, but it probably happened like last Friday, or maybe it was right before the episode actually had came out.
Gotcha.
And I was actually kind of hoping he subscribed to the channel by then, or at least this, or however he gets the information for podcasts, because when I saw that you had him on, I was like, my first thought, oh, Steve would like this, because he's actually very excited about Aptera. He likes what my overall takeaway conversation with him was that he's a big believer in the space, obviously. He loves Tesla. He's a Tesla, he's one of those bull run guys. He likes investing in Tesla, but he also loves these other EV exclusive startups. And I'm like, wow, hey,
what a wholesome guy.
I like that. Yeah. I was like, this is cool. So Steve, if you hear this, I did check out your YouTube channel. He does like little YouTube shorts, and he gives like, motivational finance type of
You'll have to send it to me. I want to see this.
Yeah. So what's up, man? And maybe I'll cross you in the parking lot again at some point. You can't be, given our trajectory of where I saw him, I don't think he lives too far from me. And I, just where the grocery store was at, I'm like, too many people.
Did we just become best friends?
It was kind of cool. I like that I found somebody who is aware of the name Taylosive and it has no affiliation to tech. I thought that was very interesting.
That's always cool to me too. Yeah.
That conversation was nothing but EVs, and it was so much fun. We talked in the parking lot for 30 minutes.
Wow.
I had my wife text like, "Are you coming home yet? Like, where are you?" And I had to tell her, like, I didn't even go in the store yet. She goes, "Why?" I'm like, "I met a fan." She goes, "Oh, you met another fan of your?" I'm like, "No, I met a Drew fan." I was trying to boast myself like I was more important than dangerous. I was.
You get those EV people together, they'll kill hours and hours and hours. That's the exact same thing. I was gonna pick my wife up from work, and I was just at my cousin's house, and he just took delivery of his rear-wheel drive long-range Model Y, and we were talking about the delivery experience and how he was feeling about it. And I was like, holy smokes, I'm late. I gotta go.
Dude.
I'd been there for 30 minutes, but it felt like 10 seconds, You know how it is.
That's exactly how it went down for me too. I was like, oh, this guy, we can't be talking. But every time I was saying goodbye to him, and I realized like it seemed like I was rushing to leave, and I wasn't. I felt like I was wasting his time. I was like, hey, Steve, it was nice talking to you, and I was trying to part my ways because I actually felt like I was being intrusive. Like he doesn't want to hear this. Like you know how it is.
I get that.
I'm gonna get going, and then I'm not gonna stop, and I'm wasting his time, and I'm like, I don't want to take up any more of your time. And he kept saying that to me, like, hey, I don't want to take up more of your time. And I realized that, like, oh, him and I are both equally just as jazzed about this. So we just talked for 30 minutes. I was like, amazing. I gotta go. My wife's calling.
that could make a t-shirt. That'd be a good one.
If you brought back the merch, keep that one on the top of
never. You could do it, but I won't.
Okay.
I won't. But anyway, you brought up Aptera.
Before you do,
I don't. Okay.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
You know, you already answered. I was gonna say you're gonna tell me how close you are, but you did.
No, I was gonna ask you a different question.
Please.
I was gonna ask. I know how I feel and how Aptera feels because I'm close with them. The whole powertrain switch, but I don't know if I've heard your take anywhere about switching from the 3 hub motor design that's technically all-wheel drive with 3 wheels to now the single motor in the front, so it's front-wheel drive, but still 66% of the motors have power. I mean, 66% of the wheels have torque directly to them. I don't know if I've heard your take on it.
We have not talked about it. I think anything that is not rear wheel drive, specifically rear wheel, I feel like is an improvement. Just period. Front wheel drive, I feel is more important than rear wheel drive, and I think the ultimate I don't want to say compromise because it's not a compromise, but that is the smartest choice they could have done, is putting it up front for the 2, and it's all about efficiency with these guys, and I think this was the best update they could be like, here's what we're going to do with non all-wheel drive. And I actually I think it's I might be wrong here. I thought that was always an option. And so I was taken back when I was like, this is news.
Yeah. They did in the configurator have front wheel drive as an option, but back then it was still just going to be 2 hub motors in the front. So the big change now is they're pretty much saying, now we're not using the hub motors for the launch edition because the Lafe isn't ready yet, and they can't scale to what we need, which I interpreted as good news. I was like, wow, it's like you're switching a motor design based on who's ready to go. To me, that's a sign you're ready to go. It would have been far worse for them to just say, we got to delay it again.
Come on now. They've been ready to go.
Yeah, I'm very excited. We're trying to coordinate the next trip down there right now, because I want to check out the PI builds when they're ready. But
sometimes you make me wish I was still living in San Diego. Sometimes.
Good. That's my goal. Get you back.
No, I can't go back until some of that real estate pricing corrects. I don't need it to go down. I just need it to correct. That's it. Then I can come home.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But no, I was just honestly, maybe I'm biased. Not maybe. I'm definitely biased towards Aptera because I'm such an efficiency guy and I want them to succeed. And you know how I feel about them. It's like, Fisker dies, we have other SUVs. Aptera dies, there's no solar car. That's why I'm like, they've got to make this work. It's got to be them. But I thought the community's response to the price potentially being higher. I mean, I think it's safe to say it will be higher than what's on the website for sure. And
no one can hurt me the way Cybertruck hurt me. Just so you know.
So I would say, relative to the Cybertruck, you didn't think the Aptera price hikes were that?
No, not at all. Actually, if I'm being honest, maybe actually, I'm approaching all this wrong. I always thought Aptera was underpricing their vehicles.
Really?
Yes.
How so?
I feel like something
the uniqueness of it, or
uniqueness not in design but in functionality. Solar's not cheap. Just period. Solar's not cheap.
It's hard to find.
That's what I mean. Like, just the production element of it. I feel like I know there's margin costs of like, okay, so here's what it costs to make, and here's what we can sell and make a profit. I always felt like it was underpriced. I don't know. I was always expecting a starting price of a two-wheel vehicle like this, one that is street legal.
Three-wheeled. You meant two-seater, I think, is what you meant to say.
I meant to say two-seater. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Two-seater, a two-seater vehicle. Normally, in the vehicle space, that is reserved for like sports vehicles, right? Like sure. I my first one I think of, because I used to drive one frequently because it was my roommate's, was a Nissan 350Z. That was a two-seater. And I love that car. Oh, my other favorite car was an Audi TT. That was also a two-seater. And those things are pricey. But
yeah,
you know, I liked small, compact, you know, are debatably for its time a sexy looking vehicle.
Yeah.
Then you get something that I would have never thought about in my younger years, especially efficiency involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I always felt like efficiency comes at a cost, personally. A two-seater efficient vehicle now, if it was to come out today, I would like if Tesla made a two-door, two-seater, their version of a
cheap roadster,
like a cheap roadster, like a very, very, very cheap
single motor roadster. Yeah,
a single motor roadster. I would start pricing for Tesla. I would start it at 65.
Really? Wow.
I would have
just for the sporty nature of it.
All of it. And it would have to be. I would assume. This is the assumption that efficiency is involved, that it is a more efficient vehicle. I always thought efficiency and price value can, have friction. Like, no, efficiency of this caliber, a sportier looking car, something easy to navigate with, it comes a bit of a premium cost, because it's not your, a lot of people won't buy it. And I felt like that comes at a cost, because a lot of people won't buy it. A lot of people will buy
the same margin as a SUV. Yeah.
SUVs, trucks, crossovers, all those things. I expect to be cheap because they should be selling in mass volume. But a two-seater, a coupe, anything that doesn't have like those margins or those mass production turnover, kind of become more expensive because they're making less of them. So I always thought Aptera, with that logic, I would have back I think 2 years ago, would have said starting at 65.
Wow.
That's what I would have. So I always thought,
I can't imagine how the community would have reacted to that.
Man, so that's why I'm like, you know what? I don't know what I'm talking about. So in my brain, I would pay 60 for an Aptera.
Really?
If I had the money, yes.
Yeah.
If I was like, and I'm in the market,
and I position now.
Right. No, I'm talking about like just as it's just me. There's no family to involve. Like I can get whatever I want, and I have the funds for it, and it's just for me. It's my play toy. I would pay 60 for an Aptera. I feel like that's reasonably priced.
They'd love to hear you say that, I'm sure.
No, I know. I never talked about it because I'm like, maybe I'm overvaluing it. Maybe I'll just.
I do think there is, at least early on, and I always get a lot of pushback when I say this, but I'm like, a vehicle that looks so radically different.
Yeah.
There's some kind of value to that. I mean, Tesla's definitely figured that out with the Cybertruck. And what does the Cybertruck have over F-150 Lightning? It's not really the range. It's got steer by wire. It's got
steer by wire.
That's cool. I'll give it that. But the frunk is way bigger on the Lightning. The bed is a little not quite as long as the Cybertruck's, but it is wider than the Cybertruck.
Right.
So in the Cybertruck bed kind of tapers in, whereas the Lightning bed is more square. So all kinds of like trade-offs, and you could, the Cybertruck charges faster. I know all the on paper advantages, but still the reason they were able to sell that thing for $100,000+ is absolutely because of the way it looks. It's iconic. It turns heads. It attracts a certain kind of buyer, and that's why celebrities are driving around the Cybertruck. And
it's like wearing the Ultra Watch or Series 2, or it's the same thing.
Sure.
Like you got to talk about that.
Yeah, and the value of having something that stands out and turns heads is is there, especially early on when it's not a very commonplace product or design yet, which is why I always thought, no, the accelerators, at least the people who, even if they're not technically on the accelerator list, like I was trying to tell people in the Aptera community, like, look, even if you're disappointed that it's front wheel drive or that it's 38,000 instead of 30,000, like someone will buy that off you. Like there is a list of people that probably aren't even aware of Aptera yet that would pay a premium just to be one of the first and to be able to buy something that eye-catching, that makes a statement about a brand and about what they care about in regards to efficiency and solar and wanting to challenge the status quo in regards to vehicle design. It was like, okay, I'm just shocked that so many people were judging Aptera that their first vehicle, their first launch edition model, was not like the most price competitive, cost effective to some other established brand on the market today. It was like, guys, it's their first model. Like,
right.
Like that's you wouldn't expect the Tesla Roadster to compete with like the RAV4. But all of the same arguments that's being used against the Aptera today could have been used against the original Roadster.
The Lotus looking one.
Yeah, the Lotus.
Actually, yeah.
You could say like, oh, that's too expensive, and I could buy something that has more seats and is more economical, and yeah, who cares that I'm not paying for gas if it costs that much? And I'm like, all of this still applies, but I still think the Tesla Roadster was a substantial, significant moment for the market because it was proving what an EV could be. It wasn't about, down the road, once you've scaled up production and once you started bringing in some profits, that's when you can start working on actually being like genuinely cost competitive with some best-selling models. And I think relatively the Aptera is very close to being cost parity with what's already on the market today for their first model, which is very difficult to do. I mean, compare that to what Lucid's first model was or Rivian's first model was. Anybody on the street could have said, when the first R1T came out, they could have said, oh, well, that's way too expensive. I could buy a Tacoma, and even 10 years spending money on gas would never get me to the price that a Rivian costs. And I get better range with the Tacoma, and yada yada yada. You can go all around all day about how there's something on the market already that can offer these things, and it's all about a new brand and a startup to figure out what their unique advantages are and what separates them. For Rivian, it would be like the software and the acceleration from the all-electric powertrain and those launch editions from Rivian where it's like, hey, this is quad motor. You're not going to find another electric truck with this kind of off-roading capabilities or this kind of software from a new brand. And I think a lot of people were attracted to that, including yourself, that were like, it's refreshing, it's attractive that it's a new brand and that they're kind of starting fresh. It's not a reskin of an F-150. Here's just an F-150 that's now electric. It's like, no, they're paving their way. They're finding their own design language and their own software, and they're making it their own. And I don't know. I'm hopeful that Aptera can find their own community like that in this next year of actually reaching the market and actually starting to build something. It's like you find the people that care about your priorities and are willing to pay a premium for that early on because they know it's unique and they know it's different, and not just go like, well, this has more seats. It's like, well, if that was important to you, you were never going to buy the Aptera in the first place. This was not in the discussion.
Like that's my whole stance with the whole, like, I can't be in the market because it no longer accommodates what I'm looking for. But
yeah,
I not crapping on it though. Like it's with Aptera's placement right now in the EV space, I'm getting some pretty strong Tesla vibes again from a whole different category though. Like with Rivian, it's like it's another EV vehicle or a truck even. But Aptera is its own thing, and it's going to turn heads the exact same way Cybertruck has been. Like Aptera is going to get the same attention as a Cybertruck, just on a smaller scale, because a lot of people don't know. So many people don't know about Aptera, which is Aptera's benefit. It's that they can use that to their advantage, because all you can go from there is really up. You're not losing market.
I think they will. I think the Cybertruck kind of went viral once delivery started, you know.
That's true.
And similar with Aptera. Once, you're right, most people have no idea who they are except Steve at the grocery store.
That's right, Steve.
But they've built quite a big community just online, but it's going to be a whole different wave once deliveries begin and there's actually people driving them around. They're going to sit there. We're going to get videos on TikTok and Instagram go, what is that thing? What am I looking at? And then people drive up to it and they're curious. Like, why does it look that way? What is going on? And they're going to see the solar. And I think it's going to go, oh, they're making solar cars now. That's a thing.
Right.
And I have already spoken to kids, adults, everyone that's just thought, you know, EVs are cool, but why don't you throw some solar panels on that thing? And it's just going to click in so many people's minds, I feel like, when they see it out driving around, that like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And unlike the Cybertruck, where people are, I think Marquez mentioned in his review of it, he was like, the most common thing is, what is that and how much did you pay for it? And something like an Aptera gathering similar amounts of attention, if it turns into, what is that? What did you pay for it? And now people can say, you know, $37,000, $38,000 instead of $100,000.
I would say that blows my mind. I would say the solar, the design, obviously, and then how would I even sum the curiosity of Aptera, people seeing it, will be enough of a driver to get more, for lack of a better word, media coverage on them. I think
agree.
That
we just got a little when I drove it for 10 minutes and there was already guys like, roll down your window. We rolled it down and he's like, what is that? I left the factory like 2 minutes before. And I'm like, that's just one.
Once you can market the efficiencies of a vehicle like that, it's going to sell itself. Like, why does it look like that? Why does it? Where's the other wheel? Why is it so? All that can be answered. Simplicity.
Yeah.
Simply. That's the way.
And I think, honestly, the answers to the questions Aptera gathers are going to be more interesting than the Cybertruck. Not trying to poo-poo Tesla, but I've seen many people in my personal life talk about this design and say, why does it look like that? I don't have a great answer. But the best I can think of, you know, asked me a couple of years ago and I would have said, well, it's the exoskeleton. It has to be rigid and strong. And now I've seen the steels pop off and people dent them.
So rigid.
And it's like, all I can say is because they wanted it to be bulletproof or because Elon wanted it to look different.
That's it. That's it
there. I don't find that answer as intriguing because then anytime you bring Elon into the discussion, it's the guy with the cigarette meme. And they go, why does it look like that? Well, it's Elon wanted it to be different.
Ben Affleck,
you know what I heard he said?
Against the wall.
You know what he said? I heard Elon said, and I'm like, oh God. I just wanted to talk about EVs. Now I gotta defend Elon's latest opinion on some political subject.
You know what's funny? I did not know this, but I'm actually I live in a relatively more what's the word? Conservative area. And so when people see when Elon gets brought up now, especially now, they're like, "Oh, Elon, he seems nice."
That's funny.
And me, I'm just like, "Ugh." Can we just move on from this? I don't care what he has to say. I just want him to stop talking about it. I don't care. I just don't care.
I really agreed with what Gally from Hyperchange tweeted yesterday. I thought it was a really, I don't agree with everything Hyperchange says, but I thought it was a really well articulated tweet just about how Tesla owners don't want to become Elon defenders or stands or anything really. There should not be any human being brought up this much by a car purchase.
Right.
And I'll admit this is kind of a side tangent. My last thoughts on Aptera that I'll conclude is just that the questions that it brings people to ask have scientific and fun answers. Like, why does it look like that? Well, because aerodynamics. In order to achieve 10 miles per kilowatt hour, you need to displace as much. There's a genuine answer instead of Elon wanted it to be bulletproof, which is just brings it more political. But on that side of things, I think so. I don't know where to begin, Randy. I'm glad you're here.
Begin with the beginning.
Okay. I could start so many different ways. My desktop on my computer is the R3.
Okay.
My wallpaper is the Red Canyon R3 renders that Rivian Forums came up with. And I talked with my wife not too long ago about whether she would want an R2 or an R3. And this all stemmed back to really me being kind of upset with the way Tesla has very much become so associated with him. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to either support or defend him. I want to be able to show up somewhere and have that not come up. And it's kept, at least in my social circles, it keeps coming up where I drive a Tesla and now people want to talk to me about Elon because of Tesla. And I just, Elon's a human being. He says things I agree and disagree with. Okay. It's a complicated, I'm not trying to say he's 100% bad or good. He's just a person. And I just got sick of the association that it got me to a point where I'm now genuinely thinking of like, I should buy a Rivian so that I don't have to deal with this anymore. Just so I can support a brand I believe in or a brand that I align with more. Simply, I don't know how RJ voted and I don't care. That's the whole point, is the fact that I don't know. No one knows. And I like it being that way because it doesn't come up in conversation. Right.
Yeah.
Because he's not as outspoken, there's not that association where people are coming up to you when you have a Rivian and going, well, what do you think of RJ? They don't care. They go, what do you think of the car? You know,
yes,
it's
exactly.
more focused on the product. But I kept catching myself for a second because I realized when I drive my Model 3, I still love this thing. This is still a good product. I've had my issues with it, but it's reliable and I appreciate efficiency. I appreciate aerodynamics and I love having the NAX port and I like having access to the full supercharger network. And I said, well, wait a second. I'm really getting invested. Like we got to the point where I was thinking about putting a deposit down on the R2 and thinking around the time when the R2 comes out, that might be around the time when we're ready to pull the trigger on an SUV of some kind. We've talked about wanting to have a bigger vehicle or something that would be better at car camping or at least have more storage capacity. Or my wife really wants a hatchback of some kind. We were going off road with some friends lately and I had to straight up just say, like, we were going like swimming / like gold panning up in this creek way out in the middle of nowhere.
Cool.
Yeah, it was fun. We had a good time, but it was straight up like we're going off-road. Do you want to meet us there? And I had to say no, because I don't want to take my Model 3. Like, I don't trust my Model 3 to be able to get there. Not because of range or battery. It was simply because of we're going off-road and I need something with more ground clearance or, some more off-road capability. And I kept thinking about Rivian the whole time of like, this was a really fun experience. I loved swimming here, and I want to be able to come back here and not have to borrow a friend's gas car, or, I want to be able to, it was a really cool spot I'd never been to that wasn't too far from me. And I was like, wow, there's some adventure to be had out there.
Adventurous.
And, keep the world adventurous. But I was like, but if Tesla comes out with something I really like, am I wrong to prioritize or want to spend extra money? Because my wife was also like, well, at that point, why don't we just buy a used Model X or, a Model Y that's got some miles on it? And I found my defense to that argument of like, why not get a used Tesla for cheaper than an R2 was simply because it's a Tesla. I don't want another Tesla. And I was like, what have I become? It's like, I used to be this like big, I got the flag in here, and I've got a semi on my desk, and I've got 2 different Cybertruck mock-ups. And I was like, I'm this big Tesla fan. And all of a sudden, I'm becoming that guy that I used to criticize of like, don't let Elon's opinions influence what you buy. Just buy what makes sense to you. And I'm like, hold on a second. I'm actually on the other side now, where I'm going, people are suggesting, like my wife, like, let's just get a used Model Y or a used Model X. Let's see what the prices are there. Something could be cheaper, could be more efficient, it could have more range, and I would swear it off because of what I think of Elon. And I'm like, what am I doing? This goes against what I've been preaching. And I just felt like I don't know who I am anymore. It's like, what
oh no, we're about to have another existential crisis.
Yeah, we're gonna have 2 therapy sessions today. But
man,
I just that was the dilemma I've been having, is like, would I buy a Tesla again? And I think the conclusion I was kind of coming to is I know too much, because my cousin is a great example. Who just took delivery of his rear-wheel drive Model Y. He loves it. He's said nothing but good things about it. Doesn't have a single service ticket. He's never taken it to the service center. Doesn't find any problems with it, even though it was made in Fremont. And he was just like, oh, it's the best. Supercharging so easy. He's got Tesla Solar already on his house. So he's got the whole ecosystem going. He bought the Tesla Solar years ago in preparation. He's like, I'm getting a Tesla one day. It's just, I got to wait till my minivan conks out on me. And then he got in an accident and the minivan was totaled. So he was like, all right, I did it. I bought it. And he loves it. They're both speaking so highly of it. And he hates Elon from the bottom of his heart. He's more so than me. I'm kind of mild on him. I'm like, well, you have to be kind of crazy, optimistic, and insane in order to attempt the things that he attempts. And Matt's just like, oh my God, I can't believe him. He's ridiculous. And years ago, even before, he hated Elon long before today. And yet I kind of envied the fact that he's able to separate art from artist so efficiently. He is able to put his foot down and just say, well, a Tesla's the best. That's the best product. So obviously I'm going to buy that. I hate Elon, but he's able to acknowledge and see, like, this is a 100,000 person company. I'm not going to write it off because of one man.
No, but the one man has a lot of weight.
He does have a lot of weight. That's true. So that's why I'm like,
it's not just, Jerry from the sales department. Like, that's Elon Musk.
It's not like, there's a lot of horrible people in the world. I'm sure there's a lot of horrible people that work at any company that you buy from. There's no way you're going to align. And I see that argument. It's a very valid argument. And I've used it against people in the past of just like, no, you shouldn't swear off a company or a brand simply because you don't agree with everything that the leader says. That's silly, because you're never going to align with whatever the leader believes or says. But I I think the counter argument that I'm now experiencing firsthand is when there's so much brand association with such a prominent celebrity, it's almost impossible to not be affected by it now, where it's like I really don't want to have an Elon talk everywhere I go, even though I love this product and I love, you know, what I can do with it, and I've road tripped with it, and I'm very satisfied. I'm a satisfied customer. And even here's the funny thing though, is even if I switch to a Rivian, I'd be using superchargers all the time. So,
but nobody talks about Elon when it comes to the super, because that right there, I don't know if it's appropriate. I've personally I've dealt with this in my own life about separating the art from the artist. And I distinctly making a comment about like, don't, you know, if you like the art, appreciate the art. But yeah, I think I've changed my.
I knew it'd be a fun topic for you because you're like, save your money, you know, watch your budget, watch your wallet. But what happens, which I think this is actually a very real possibility, if the Tesla route is the more affordable route,
dude.
But
no, that's true, man.
You got to pay the premium to get away from it, you know? Like
it sucks because you hit the nail right on the head right from the offset of this whole conversation, is that we know too much.
Right. My cousin Matt, he's not reading Elon's tweets. He's not actively
and it's not even that.
watching.
Elon has provoked his fan base. He's activated them. And I think the last straw of solidifying what I was struggling with is what happened to you. And I don't know why, but I take personal offense about that in a way that I can't get. It's been a month that I can't get over it. I don't know why I can't.
Something about being a fan and knowing how toxic those same fans can be.
Yeah.
And that whole experience with the flat tire definitely, like never before, made me want to disassociate with the brand. It was like,
Drew,
I don't want to be
telling you this as a friend. That day, I'm not making this up because of the show. I was this close to just hitting sell all. And
I was too, to be honest.
Screw my exit strategy.
I didn't care about the potential losses or
I didn't either. That's the thing, man. Like I was upset. I was upset for you, and it's made me mad that, because it's like it was such a hive mind mentality for all the reasons we've already talked about. But then it's also like there is a cult leader at the head of all this animosity, and I don't care what Elon believes in. I just don't. I'm not all one thing. I'm not all Republican or Democrat or whatever. Like I don't care. I just simply, it's that simple. But every time he provokes something, all his little yes men minions that work for free over, 24 hours over the clock here, that like just defend everything he says, makes me like, it's cringe. It's just like, grow up. I have independent thought about things that make me. Elon's view of the world is not my view of the world. There are things I agree with him about strongly, so much so that for years of my life, I put my money where my mouth is and I invested in the company. And I bought a product to align with my beliefs of what he believed. At one point,
straight up tweets. Did you see those old tweets that came up that was like, I don't want to get into politics. I just want to make great products for the world. And I was like, see, I remember that. I do those tweets. And I remember going, yeah, that's the way to be. Don't worry about politics.
A part of me was looking for like, where's our modern day? Like there was a vacuum in this like I'd say influencer space, but I don't mean influencer like YouTubers. I mean genuine innovators. There was a vacuum when Steve Jobs died. And I never had such clarity again until early Elon Musk. And I wasn't maybe a part of me, a younger version of me, was looking for something bigger than me to believe in that can take the form of a human, flaws and all, because I wanted to rally behind something that I couldn't maybe articulate or understand why, but I just knew emotionally that it was the right thing. And I distinctly, you want to talk about like, I distinctly remember 2017 and the whole submarine situation on trying to save somebody and him fighting with somebody and all that. And I distinctly was like, that's, Elon, that's kind of inappropriate, but all right, man, whatever. But just that, and he was getting sued, like, this, like, that guy was crazy, and he's and all these things. I'm thinking, like, dang. And I remember, like, people coming for Steve Jobs back when he was alive, and I was like, dang, y'all, like, don't appreciate what he's doing. And I realized
Steve Jobs never had a Twitter account. Probably would have been horrible.
But my outlook was wrong from the get-go, because maybe I was looking for simply I was looking for a role model. Something I couldn't find in my own life, something I didn't have in my own immediate circle of things. I was always somebody else's role model, but I was like, I want a role model, someone I can maybe in some ways, at least in action, emulate, but just in my own lane. And I realized, and I can only realize, talk about Steve Jobs, like, connect the dots, looking back. I was looking for that with a big innovator. Like, it was crazy because, like, the whole, like, do you want to make a dent in the universe? Right? That was Steve's thing. And I was like, dang, you are saying things that, like, I didn't even think was possible that mankind could even be capable of trying to even emulate. And he did. And in a way, Elon also, with EVs, it thinks with SpaceX. He does incredible things that I just, regardless of how I feel, I will never deny him his flowers for, that he's done incredible work. But good God, when they say don't meet your idols, God, I remember specifically in 2017, I said, I had this conversation with a friend in real life, and I said, I would give anything. I would pay literally, and we even had, like, I would pay a literal $50,000 to be a fly on the wall for one day and just shadow Elon and see what he's like, because he was such an enigma back then, and I meant that.
Yeah.
This is around the time I'm also investing in Tesla and stuff like that. And I already had this trajectory of, like,
I think I said similar things in my earlier videos. I said, like, I hope I get to meet him or interview him one day.
Yeah. Like, I was so jealous when Marquez got to go to the factory and Jonathan Morrison followed. I was like, oh man, I could not get enough. I watched every podcast. I would watch any and everything. And then COVID happened.
That'd be another good feature.
And so now it's like, wow. And then I start growing up, because I had a very adolescent mindset about all that, because, like, it's flawed to want to find an idol, and that's a whole nother philosophical almost, like, discussion there. But I started just looking. I have to do it. I wish Mike was here so he can, hate on me about this, but I started to look at the world with my own eyes. And then I was like, I value what I see through the world over what anybody else does. I can parallel my thoughts with some people that I agree with and understand and have better clarity about it. But I'm only at this point just trying to find better clarity about the things that I find value in. And when that was happening, especially the the catalyst of it all is the whole Twitter acquisition situation. I just slowly was like, no, I don't know. No. And at the same time, like,
I was rooting for it too. If you go back and watch my videos, I was advocating that, like, hey, the previous Twitter management was not doing a great job. Like,
which is true.
Yeah, it still is true. And I was critical towards how Twitter was being run in the past. So I was all in favor of, like, let's just have a change in leadership regardless. If it's going to be Elon, okay, let's let it be Elon. And then, yeah, it felt.
I remember, like, because this is at the same time too that I'm over here rooting for, like, you know, Nick leaves the show to go pursue his film, his photography passions, documenting Starbase, and I'm like, dude, like, I've never been more conflicted. Where I'm like,
that's the coolest stuff he's got going on, in my opinion, is the SpaceX.
Agreed.
Stuff.
Oh, it's 100%. And it's not because we don't know much about it. It's because I think that's just on a macro level. Like, that's so much more important too. Anyway, I like, this whole time I'm over here, like, conflicted from 2022 to now. I've been like, but I've been slowly being more pushed away because he's not behaving like a chief executive. He's not behaving like someone who's running a public company. I don't care how he behaves on Twitter because it's not a publicly traded company. I'm not invested into it. I didn't put money in it, and I never would have. I don't care how the same reason about, like, a SpaceX, for the same reason. But because I got in at such a weird earlier time in my life with Tesla and wanting to buy it and all these things, and he's in lifetime affecting the stock because of his ego. He's not acting like a chief executive. Yes, neurotic, maybe even autistic, as he self-proclaims. He's not diagnosed, but he self-proclaims. There are things that make him look at the world very differently, and he behaves very differently. I get that. But my guy, you are in a management position. You are in a leadership position that has real world repercussions to your shareholders. And so people have told you, me, and other people, just sell your stock and get index funds and da-da-da-da-da, and said, dude, I will. Believe you me, I will.
I will too.
I have an exit strategy for that and lessons learned too. But none of that bothered me more than watching a hive mind swarm you. I could have still let all of that go all these years and not let it affect me the same way, because business is business and business will be good because the product is good and blah, 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 blah. But the moment, like, this happened to you for some weird emotional reason, maybe because I know you so well, I don't really know what it is, but I felt so personally offended and disgusted, and I felt secondhand toxic and gross and just like, no, I don't see this in Aptera, Rivian. Shoot, I thought for a second, I was like, I'll just get a Mach E or an F-150 Lightning. Like, I don't see them. And trust me, Ford versus Chevy has been a decades-long thing. Like, it has its own problems. And, like, I will run with this crowd and be affiliated as a Ford guy before I continue this train anymore. Like, I felt so upset because I blame Elon. And there's all these other people who are looking for their idol, who might just I forget the word, not correlate, but they more or less, everybody comes together,
group,
and they ultimately, like, I found a community. This is my community, and I'm going to defend my community because that's just how our brains are. Like, we have to defend our communities because maybe in a very primal, maybe barbaric way, we had to defend our tribe or our home or our village. And so we have an instinctual reaction of defending the thing that we care about or the people that we care about. Even if you don't know them, you will defend the idea of them. And maybe in the exact same way that, like, because I do know you and I saw that happen to you, I don't know much about the community like that, but I know who you are, and I know that whole situation, that should never happen to anybody, but especially should not happen to you. And the tactics that were being used against you, that is just a variance of things that Elon would have said. I'm thinking like, dude, this is gross. And it makes me so frustrated that I too, my next car can't be a Tesla. At least not in this current leadership position. It can't, because I'm not okay with how irresponsible and immature the community is. And I know we'll get hate for that, and we have gotten crapped on, but we take yourself, anybody who just has that instinctual reaction to want to respond and defend anything and everything Tesla and Elon and Tesla, because it's one and the same. If you just remove the community element from there, would you have been okay with anybody if this was in the public street, or even if somebody you knew got attacked that way just because of a situation that was no matter how you look at it, unfortunate, and it was sad to have ever even happened. And then you use that, kick somebody when they're down, use that opportunity to just like, would you participate in that? Would you be that hive mind? And you see it more and more in America with this heightened like division about something. If it's not us, it's them. It's always an us versus them. Somebody. Why does there always have to be a bad guy? Why is there always an antagonist? Why can't it just be, we want to make everything better for the sake of making it better without there being a villain associated to it? It has to take to a point of what? An attempted political assassinations and stuff like that. At this point, it's like, what are we doing here that you're willing to just cause so much animosity and hate and all these things that I don't want anything to do with it? And then I just see this peaceful little quaint, humble beginnings, it ain't much but it's honest work, garden of Rivian flowers growing, or Aptera flowers growing, or even Tello flower. And I'm like, oh, and it's warmer over there. The sun is on the skin, but the air is crisp, but the sun is warm. And it's like, oh, I can just relax over here, and it's quiet, and you hear little birds chirping, and it's just like, wow.
Yeah.
And sure, we're using a box to help grow these things, metaphorically calling it that of the supercharger. And so it's affiliated and has a little Tesla logo. But it's like, okay, it's just a piece of the equation. If I don't like it or something doesn't work, there's other chargings. Who cares? Because then you don't feel like this weird knot in your stomach about like, oh, I got to defend this. I got to talk about this. I got to whatever. When there's so much more cooler things to talk about.
Yeah, I agree. There's much cooler things to talk about. But I think what a lot of this feeling stems from is wanting to like teach everybody a lesson, like that'll show them if I get rid of my car or sell my stock or I buy a product from the competing brand, that kind of like is your own way of, voting against with your wallet. And I think what I've just come to accept, maybe not everybody feels this way, but like I've just accepted that there are powerful people or people with a lot of money that are still part of the problem, as you would say, like a toxic member of the community that attacks or shames anybody who has bad experiences or shames Elon. They're flawed people. And I guess I'm tending to not look at it so much as they're flawed because the brand is flawed. Instead, they're flawed because they're human. And at the end of the day, even with its flaws in the community, even with its flaws in its leadership that we may not agree with, there are still quality products that can come out of it, and products that are safe, that are efficient, that are affordable, that check all the boxes. And I suppose I'm just envious of the people that aren't as involved with the community. You know, if it was my cousin who hit the pothole and had a bad experience, he's not going out tweeting about it and getting dogpiled on. He just had a sucky experience and he tells his friends and family about it, and that's that. And then he goes about his day. But because my experiences, or because I'm a more content creator in my line of work, and I feel like it is about honesty, being transparent with all the good and all the bad. And that's what we should do as content creators, is share, here's what I like, here's what I don't like. Your experience is kind of magnified more so than the average consumer may experience. You know, average consumer experience, something goes bad, something goes wrong, you remember it, you get a little chip off the shoulder and go, that sucked, I guess I'll pay attention more next time, or I'll be more careful with how service handles things next time. And then you go about your day. Yeah. And you're not thinking about it. Like if this would have happened and I wasn't a content creator, this happened weeks ago and I wouldn't even be thinking about it. But because I'm a content creator and we talk about our experiences and how the community reacts to things, this kind of gives us a preview of here's what the masses are going to think of these concepts, and here's the people who agree or don't agree with whatever subject matter there is. So in that regard, I'm trying to fight that urge to just feel like, well, even though I'm on Twitter more than the average person and I know way more about what Elon's tweeting than the average person does, I can't let that get to me. I can't let the toxic community get to me and basically force me to make a purchase decision that is not necessarily the best one, purely because of who I want to be associated with, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, but you shouldn't be punished because of your profession. That's not how that works, where now you have to suck it up because something very unique has happened or is happening to you. Because like at the end of the day, your feelings are still valid no matter what. It's not a punishment or a reward that your line of work is that of more of a public visibility. That doesn't negate anything about your experience, your feelings towards it. And talking about like this whole, being true to ourselves thing from Tech earlier, like you had a real situation, and we talked about how like I used to tweet to literally nobody for years. I was tweeting out loud. I had you put that tweet out there, nobody saw it, doesn't negate the fact that you were still frustrated in that moment about the situation that happened with FSD. And just the fact that it got amplified because of the people around it and because of your line of work here. Now you're expected to just tame your emotions and be less authentic. Now you're expected to deal with it because you're in the public eye. That's not how this works. No, nobody tells you, don't tell anybody how they're supposed to feel or respond, and nobody should be telling you how to feel or respond. That's not how this works. You have the exact same amount of rights to feel and experience life, especially in EVs, as much as your cousin who is not on social media. Yours is not greater or less than, and it doesn't diminish just because you have a following. Screw the following. The following doesn't make or break none of the fact that that situation happened. The pothole happened. That wasn't going to change none of it. That was always going to happen, regardless. It took you saying, okay, now I know I'm not going to do it anymore. That was always going to happen with or without your line of profession. So it is not fair for you to have to, well, this would have been different in the reaction. Who cares about their reaction? We can't control their reaction to it. The only thing that matters is that had happened. And also what matters is the fact of the matter is what matters. Meaning, this is your field. You're in this space. You do feel the way you feel. And if that means I might want to try other things, that is a valid reaction to the response of your job, of your limelight online public persona. That if now it makes me want to explore other options, if that happened to me, which is funny because it kind of feels like indirectly it did happen to me, all that tells me is that, like, all right, now I'm going to have other new content to cover as well when we get to that point, because it's not Talos of Tesla, it's Talos of EV. So when Aptera eventually launches and you are able to use those referral things to redeem and get your hands on it, that too was always going to happen then, with or without that situation happening. And you would have now new, maybe more matured perspective of the product line of EVs. And maybe inevitably, because of your job, you may have been always destined to slowly move away from Tesla, just to give other vehicles the same window of opportunity that you gave Tesla. No different than you putting your SIM card into a Z Flip or a Pixel. Sure. It doesn't matter if that's simple. It's just it's on a bigger scale with more numbers associated to it. Yeah. But the operations is still the same. So if there was a backlash that happened, like it did happen, you should have a type of you have a unique perspective of what had happened with the community because of that should alter your opinions on what you want to do going forward in a fair way. That's like, well, listen, this is my experience, and because of that, I'm now going to just maybe consider trying other things, and that's valid. And people, because like, if you leave and they crap on you like you were never real, but they were always going to say that no matter what the situation is. They're just looking for a reason. Or if you stay and they're like, I see you're just an Elon Musk boy who can't see the, whatever. Like, people are always going to have their opinion. We will never change the hate that comes our way. You taught me that one with all the hate that I sometimes get. That like it's going to happen. And we can't control that, but what we can control is our own experiences. And your experience was unique to this one, but it's still a valid one because it affected more than just you. It affected the people in your car. The reactions on Twitter has affected me. It's not changing how I feel, even though you're making the like, well, if it happened to anybody else, well, it didn't. It happened to you. So you have this unique view of life because of your positioning of it. You have a unique perspective that may or may not have a ripple effect, and regardless of it, it's a true event that happened. If all of anything else that's exposed was a bit of a toxic environment, I'm glad I'm now more aware of the environment, because it makes me make a better judgment call if or when that time comes and I have to make that decision. We don't know what's going to happen. We might change our minds a year or two from now. We're like, you know what? I think I'm going to rock with the Model 3 a little bit longer. We don't know. But I'd rather have more information than less. I don't want to be ignorant to the space that I'm in. I would not have bought Tesla with my ignorance. I bought my Tesla when I did because of my knowledge. Everyone else was crazy, calling me crazy for doing it, but they were the ones that were ignorant for it. And now nobody's saying I made a dumb mistake. But in 2019, I had coworkers saying I was freaking stupid. And I was like, well, mine will tell, won't it? And guess what? Mine stood the test of time. But I would rather make always more decisions based off of more knowledge instead of ignorance. So yeah, that's it.
That's fair. I do think it's important to keep in mind that, because it's a toxic humanity problem, this could happen with any brand. I was pretty disappointed with a lot of the Aptera community's reaction, because I feel like you said, how I'm confirmation bias. I'm probably confirmation bias for a lot of Aptera people. That's true. But it's because I genuinely, personally align with the same things that they do. Like the things they prioritize are important to me, and I think they make the right decisions. So that's why I defend them. And if I think they do something wrong, I call them out on it. And now I actually have the ability to literally call them when I think they're doing something wrong.
Hey, I think this is wrong.
I've never had. But I've done that. I've straight up, I've told them, when they announce things or if they do something, I've got both the Chris's numbers, so I can say, hey, just think about this before you blah blah blah. I've suggested things.
And because of your unique positioning of your public persona of where you're at, you also get the benefit of having some direct line of accesses to these other people that aren't called Elon, where maybe it has a better, bigger, and more effective impact. Like, hey, listen, I'm just saying my piece. You make the decision. It's your call. I'm just saying, have you looked at it from this point of view? Oh, you have? Cool. Oh, you haven't?
That's pretty much what
I was
we've
able to help.
done. Yeah. That's pretty much what we've done. But like, all I'm saying is I think it could be an endless battle if you switched brands every time the community did something that frustrated you. Because like,
I get it.
we could be early in RJ's arch. Maybe RJ is in Elon 2016 mode, and a few more years go down the road and RJ will start tweeting crazy things or saying,
you either die a hero or you live long enough to become the villain.
That's it. Which is why, because that's
it happened to Bill Gates. It happened to
it happened to Steve Jobs.
It did. And then he died a
villain.
He died a hero before. Well, he was maybe a villain in the
He saw 80s. Social media coming into play and went,
I'm gonna head out.
I don't want to be around for this.
He had some unreleased Apple product that showed him the future, and he saw what Twitter was about to become. And that
the Mac OS time machine.
His body reacted in such a negative way, it gave him cancer, and he's like, I'd rather have this. I'm gonna head out. He had the first prototype of Vision Pro. He had the vision, and it went straight to his pancreatics.
The vision of the friend AI necklace.
That thing was so ridiculous.
It's a shame Mike's not here to defend it, but
I want to ask you something.
Anyway.
I was going to start the show with this,
okay,
but I guess we can end the show with this instead. Still could be a good title and thumbnail idea. Have we been? This is an honest question, and I want you to reflect.
Okay.
Have we been too harsh, wrong, or have we not given fair assessment on modern day hybrids?
See, I'm thinking like you told me to. I'm not.
I want you to. It's an honest question.
My knee-jerk reaction is to answer as quickly as possible, but I'm trying not.
I know. Why?
So I'm stalling.
Okay. Go ahead. Respond.
Did you see my tweet today? Is that why you're asking this?
No, I haven't been on. Besides the thing that you sent me and I tweeted my little Apple thing, I haven't actually looked. No.
Well, without directly answering your question, tweet I made
go to Twitter
5 hours before posting this was someone tweeted a photo of the latest generation Prius.
Oh.
And it says, one of life's cruelties is that the new Prius looks genuinely stunning, but they fitted it with a drivetrain duller than American chocolate.
Wow.
And I quote tweeted that with literally, as I read that tweet, there was I was at, ironically, auto shop. I was getting the Sonata fixed because my Sonata's been having problems. Okay. And literally minutes before I read that tweet, I had saw the new 2024 Toyota Prius. So I quote tweeted his tweet by saying, I'm seeing a lot of these, and it's the only gas vehicle that's tempted me to switch back.
Whoa.
So it's funny that you bring that up.
Interesting. I did not see your tweet.
To be fair, I have not test driven one. And I haven't given
that yellow. Is that weird?
A fair bit of research. It's kind of a nice yellow. I agree. But
is that a render?
I don't know. Maybe. But to answer your question more directly, instead of giving you hints left and right.
Yeah.
I do think, based on the replies I got, which I didn't think were toxic, but the replies I got to that quote tweet, I think painted the bigger picture of hybrids.
Let me see.
Which is that There's added complexity because now you have a combustion engine and a high voltage battery and an electric motor to maintain. And typically, the additional price of that complexity results in the gas savings not really paying for the premium that is the battery and the high voltage wiring. I will admit, on paper, it is very appealing. Like,
you're looking at it from an upkeep point of view, like the cost of maintenance.
Because a good argument that someone corrected me on with that tweet was that while hybrids may have smaller battery packs because they don't have, great long distance EV range, you add a lot more cycles to those battery packs because of it. Like, you are charging that thing from 80 to 20 far more frequently than you are a big battery on an EV. So the high voltage battery needs to be replaced far sooner than the typical EV battery. And you still have oil, you still have a transmission, you still have head gaskets, you still have all of the downsides of a combustion engine. While on paper, I do see the appeal. Like, that the coolest thing about the latest Prius to me, besides just looking a lot better than older Priuses, is the fact that they can get 40 miles of all electric range. You can plug it in. And for a lot of my daily driving, that would mean not even touching the combustion engine. It means it would be an EV for a lot of its life. And then on the few instances in which you need more range than 40 miles, the Prius is like over 600 miles of range.
Yeah.
And then you could refuel it at a gas pump very quickly. So again, all the paper things, all the tech specs do look very good. If you don't care about performance like me, because everyone did mention that it's very slow and sluggish. It's not a performance vehicle, but I don't care about that. I bought the slowest Tesla and I drive in chill mode. But like, the fact that the high voltage battery would wear out much, much faster because I'd basically be using an entire cycle every day. And now I have a combustion engine to worry about too. And on those road trips or on those days where I need more than 40 miles, I would still have to be paying for gas. The edge case, I think, is more people who do extreme miles and really need to shave off as much time on a road trip as possible. Like, I've done all day road trips with a gas car and an EV, and I know that the EV penalty switching from my Sonata to my Model 3 is about 2 hours.
Yeah.
So every time I do an all-day road trip, it adds 2 hours to the overall drive. To me, having a high cycle life battery, much larger battery, and you're not going to be killing it as quickly because, for one, it's LFP. But for two, driving 40 miles a day is not going to add one cycle to the battery pack every day, whereas it would in the Prius. And I know that Model 3 doesn't have a transmission. It doesn't have head gaskets. It doesn't have a catalytic converter. It doesn't have oil that needs to be changed, or carburetor, all kinds of things that the combustion engine needs. And I think what happens with me occasionally, when I start thinking about it, I see that Prius go by and go, yeah, I could make some really good trip time with that, is I've been with an EV for so long that I'm forgetting all of the downsides of the combustion engine. I'm forgetting, there's still a lot of downsides involved with that. You're just not factoring that in because you've driven an EV for so long. So that's what I try to remind myself when I send out tweets like, if you put a gun to my head and said, Drew, you have to buy a gas car, which would you buy? Yeah, I'd probably say the Prius Prime, because for a lot of its life, I wouldn't even need to turn over the engine. I could just plug it in from home and treat it like it's an EV. I see the appeal to that, but once people start bringing up, think of the cycle life on a battery pack that small. Think about how gasoline can't just sit in there forever. It's bad for it. Think about the oil changes. Think about how that combustion engine will age. still has a lot more moving parts and valves, and Priuses are, I mean, not Priuses, but hybrids in general are just more complex. There's more things that can go wrong. And as a guy who appreciates simple design and minimalism, I'm much more of the all EV guy than I am the let's try to make both work. It's like, I think I would rather go super cheap used gas car. If you're really trying to save money, you should go way lower price than what the Prius is, which I think starts around 30 grand. It's like, if you're dropping 30 grand, you're so close to a long range Model 3 anyway. just go all in. Don't go half in and half out, you know. So that's where my headspace is at it. I think if you're towing great distances, the Ram Charger, what do they call it? It's a hybrid, but they have like a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, and then a gas generator to charge that battery pack when you need more like 600, 700 miles of range. But we all know when towing, it's going to be more like 300 miles. So I see the appeal to that, but again, I don't know if there's a lot of profit to be made there because they haven't made them yet, and they still don't want to say how much they cost. But there's, in my opinion, a little bit of a market for hybrids, but the fact that the Model Y has become the best-selling car in the world is, to me, an indicator that I think we're ready to move on.
So much to unpack there, but I'm going to try. I took mental notes of at least 5 things that you said. I didn't see your tweet. Yeah, I did. I know. I like it. No, that was great. I don't know if you changed my mind or not. I'll know after I'm done saying it because I'm going to digest it in live time. But the first thing is, I didn't see the tweet. This thought came from me. This morning, Mike sent me a YouTube video of the new refreshed, the next gen and hybrid Maverick. That I just
the Mavericks are cool. I don't think it's a plug-in hybrid, is it?
I don't know. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's just a passive hybrid, but
okay.
Yeah.
So, but my thought of hybrids, I started thinking because they were touting the hybrid, all-wheel drive and hybrid. I was like, I don't think about hybrids at all, ever. Like, I pretend they don't exist. And so then I spent today thinking about hybrids. So, not that it's not that I have pushback. I guess it's relative where your money is going to go is what I think about. The battery thing. You harped on the battery thing, and this is a real question. To replace a battery in a Prius, since this one we're using, is that expensive? I don't know what the cost of a battery for a Prius is.
I'm sure it's cheaper than replacing the battery in a Tesla, obviously, because the battery's a 10th of the size. But I think it's more the labor that's the expensive part. It's the battery itself is cheaper, but the process of getting it out and getting a new one in is more complex.
Anything mechanical is going to that's what's going to hit your pockets is the work on it.
Right.
We haven't seen a situation with Teslas having the battery so bad that like it's unusable now for the most part. Like
there's a few.
There is a few, but
it like tends to happen with the lower battery options.
So where I go with that is when it comes to the life cycle of a battery and getting it replaced. I don't know of a situation right now with plug-in hybrids that this has become a problem yet. And specifically, I've been paying attention to that of the Volvos and now Toyota. I'm trying to see what can you expect the lifespan of not the engine, but then of the battery before that has to get replaced, and how does that factor into the cost then at that point? There's one thing. 2, moving parts and having to inevitably address. My cat converter for an old car that I had was my biggest problem, the most expensive fix. I spent like over $600 just on the part alone. It was very annoying because it was an older car, but I was like, I mean, I knew what it was, and Teslas weren't really a thing yet. But when I think about things going out, inevitably, I don't know when it's going to happen to us, but inevitably, we're going to have electrical issues with our Teslas. I don't know what will be. I had an issue with my window, and thank God it got resolved as quickly as it did. And I had an issue with my my battery underneath behind the back passenger in the back seats. I had an issue about that. Remember, I couldn't cool my car down anymore, and so
right.
I opened that
to
up.
answer your question from earlier, I looked it up, and most Prius battery replacements range between $2,000 $4,000.
Okay.
So it's not game changing prices.
No, but I mean
still, it's a
$600 is a lot. Like that, I'm not going to undermine. Like that's money. That's your. I hope you have. If people have $1,000 saved, you're already over your emergency savings. So like that's a lot of money. My overall takeaway with maintenance and thinking of like moving parts and stuff like that when it comes to the mechanical elements of an ICE vehicle instead of electric is that you're just moving, like more cars have become more electrical and less mechanical. And I remember the situation actually distinctively that I had a friend who had a Subaru Outback and it's more electrical, and the thing gave out and it cost him so much more to get that fixed. Specifically, he's a mechanic. He works for Volvo or Volkswagen, excuse me. And he tells me all the time, he's like, dude, don't get an Outback. I'm like, oh, okay, why? He's like, they are so much more expensive because there's more electrical. The more electrical stuff that's in part of the components of the vehicle, it's more difficult to work on, and we have to take our time, and it's going to cost more. He's like, I'd rather be working on a Ford or a Chevy any day of the week over working on this Outback. It's annoying, but it's part of what it's built, and more cars are going towards that way. And I think about, just if we're talking about maintenance and upkeep, I don't know if I'm going to worry too much about, do I want it to be mechanical or do I want it to be electrical, just period, because it's when we have to cross that bridge, it has to get resolved regardless. My thing that I actually then now worry about is not the upkeep of it. And talking about, we'll use the new Prius that you tweeted. I wouldn't buy a new anything for vehicles really anymore.
Yeah.
You were right. That one thing I 100% agree with you on the back end of what you're saying is like 30 grand. Nah, man. If you're buying 30 grand on anything, I think I would just go towards an EV, because in my brain, going back to the whole Aptera thing, like I would put an EV up there as a premium because it's more simplistic and I think more stylish and more desirable.
They're usually quiet, or they're faster.
They're just efficient. Like going back to efficiency too. The thing that I was thinking about hybrids is that like maybe I'm disregarding this whole efficiency thing when it comes to range. With that, the cost element to it, I wouldn't drop new money. I wouldn't recommend dropping new money like 30 grand on a hybrid or a gas vehicle. But
no.
But the only reason why I was like, why have I not been thinking about hybrids? I fear as a industry, we're not moving to EVs quicker than I initially thought we were.
I see that too. Yeah.
Because of that, I feel the most appropriate stopgap for a used vehicle would be a hybrid over a gas vehicle, strictly on the distance element of it. Because my brain, going back to the old ways of vehicles, is, well, how many miles to the gallon is the great question. What's the projected miles to the gallon? And hybrids have always, caught my attention when it comes to distance. And I feel personally that if we're not going to get to the EV utopia that we all kind of would like to see anytime soon, and I don't even think it's going to happen by 2030 or 2035 anymore. Like, I actually think that's going to take a lot longer. I would think that maybe a good alternative for anybody is to buy a used good hybrid over a gas vehicle. Now, with that, my last note is, if the gas vehicle only costs like maybe, what's a realistic number by the end of the year? 10,000, 5,000? I don't know.
Sure.
Then stretch your dollar as best as you can, absolutely, and then drive that to the ground for as long as you can, absolutely. But if hybrids aren't that far off, I would much rather take my chances with the hybrid, knowing that I can get better range, and maybe even those situations where it's like I can get around town 40, 50, whatever the mileage is of that future duration easily. Then I'll take my chance. I'll just ride with that for a little bit longer. And I'm thinking of somebody who's not me, because I mean, I got my time. I'm not going anywhere with an EV.
Right.
But
right.
I don't want to be the guy who's always just saying, "Oh, get an EV, get an EV," because I feel like I'm sounding like a jackass when I say that, not understanding the price elements that kind of go into it when it comes to these purchases. But I believe in it so much that I'm like, okay, then get a hybrid. And I realized by this morning, I was like, I haven't been talking about hybrids at all. Am I disregarding them too much, or I don't know. So anyway,
I think even as I was just looking up quickly how much a hybrid battery costs, I went on Quora because someone was debating replacing theirs, and in the responses they were saying sell it because hybrids tend to hold their resale value more. So that would be my only pushback, is that typically hybrids are not going to be on price parity with the used gas cars. They're going to be more expensive because people know that they're more efficient or have the option of not using the combustion engine. And I looked a little bit on Marketplace, and I didn't see crazy low prices on most hybrids, but I'm sure it's lower than EV. But I think it is a bit more equally spaced between pure gas and EV, which means not quite on an ultra budget. So I've heard from others, and I would happily be proven wrong if people can find it, but most of the data I've seen says that the premium you pay for a hybrid won't pay for itself over the life of it, because of you've got two things to maintain now. More like whether it's mechanical or electrical, I tend to just think everything in a car is going to go wrong at some point. So the less parts, especially the less moving parts you have, the better. So if you've got a high voltage battery and a combustion engine, the likelihood of something going wrong is now much higher. Whereas that's one perk, I guess, of Tesla's engineering, is they keep things very simple. There's not a lot to it. Everything's kind of on that main screen. So if the screen goes bad, you're out of luck. But hey, now at least you replace one thing, and functionality is restored. So that's what I like about EVs, is just the simplicity of how little moving parts there are.
Would you rather, or not would you rather, is it a fair assessment that your recommendation is get a really good, not for pricing, get a really good EV or get a really affordable gas vehicle? Those would be one of those options. If you don't really have the budget for it, get a really affordable gas vehicle. If you have some money, you've been saving up for something, get a really good EV. It's one of those two. Not get a master of one, not a jack of all trades. And
kind of that mentality. But I do think that the EV transition is slower than both of us thought. I just don't think it's a range issue, especially because most people are not driving 600 plus, 500 plus miles a day. I think it's a behavioral education issue. It's like people are too hesitant
it's a cost
because
issue.
I would agree if EV prices weren't falling below gas vehicle prices.
No, but what I mean, I don't even mean like that. I mean like, God, I can't believe I have to use this as a marker. Pre-COVID, you could reasonably expect, if we're just talking new, you can reasonably expect to pay $15,000, maybe $20,000 for a really good brand new car, just car, pre-COVID. And people, oh, well, okay, fine. But that was the marker set, and then the used inventory would be, maybe 5 or 10,000 or whatever. Like there was an expectation. A lot of people bought those cars, still hold on to those cars, and now that they're coming to a point where it's like it's time to look at buying a new car, and now post-COVID, inflation and all, 35,000 for the same, like blowing their mind. I feel like it's more of a cost issue that we're like, no, I'm gonna stick with the $15,000 older variant I had. That's whatever, just fine. And okay, so I got paid for gas and whatever, oil and all that, but
yeah,
I paid $15,000, and they're asking for 35 for the same thing now. But now as an EV, like I feel like, not that the costs are dropping, but at least the people who I've communicated with, I don't think they realize how much more expensive everything has gotten over the last 4 years. And
that's true.
They have not wrapped their mind around, like, I can't believe this is the new norm, regardless of whether it's cheaper or more expensive than the comparison of whatever. Like, just the fact that like everything has gone up, and they're like, whoa. And what's crazy is I was telling them in 2021, 2022, I was like, dude, chip shortage, people want to buy my car because they can't get one of their own. And they were like, yeah, but it's just a niche thing. I was like, it's every vehicle needs a chip, because every vehicle has electrical now. Every vehicle has a computer now in some way, shape, or form. It's just, that's how it is. If you're going to buy a new car or relatively new, that's what you're dealing with. And especially when the shortage happened, then it's like, now used cars are getting snatched up. So cause that to skyrocket. So their expectation of what they think their budget was pre-COVID, let's say 2018, 2017, right, that I was willing to pay 15,000 for. That was their budget. 15,000 ain't going to get you anything of that caliber today. And I think that's what people are struggling with, and thus causing a delay kind of altogether. Which also, with manufacturing, cars are sitting on the lots longer, and then they got to move to, like, I've been studying a little bit about like how are they moving inventories. Like there's an up and flow of things, but
you're right. Feel like there's an industry-wide slowdown, but the thing is that should affect new car sales, period, which I believe it has. I've heard that gas or electric dealers are having a hard time lately moving inventory, which there's interest rates that affect that, and there's economic.
That's how they try to get you. Hey, 0% financing if you come with us, and they'll do anything to get this thing off, this lemon off their lot.
Yeah, but that's just what I mean by, like, there's a lot of reasons I think EV adoption isn't going as quickly as we'd all like, but I don't think it's a range thing, which is why I'm not really giving hybrids much thought, because that's really what it is it's like, how do we give you the perks of an EV but still give you the range of a gas car? But Tesla's said for a while now, like, Prius was their most traded in vehicle. Like, a lot of people were trading in higher range Priuses for Teslas, and I think it's not so much a range as it is a charger. Not everybody can charge from home, which is why I think vehicles like Aptera would make a big impact of, like, what if the vehicle can charge itself and actually has really good range at a relatively low price. And even if you are fast charging it, you can go a lot longer between those charges. And even if you are home charging it, it'll be much, much cheaper than any other EV to charge. So I don't think the advantages of EVs have been thoroughly explored. And brands like Aptera or Tello, and Ford is even catching on to this too, are slowly starting to realize, like, okay, maybe getting batteries at scale to have a certain kilowatt hour rating is harder than we thought. We need to lean into the smaller form factor so that we can get lower prices and higher range. And
bingo.
It's all a self plug at the end of the day, but
No, not even that. I'm just saying that's what I want to see. The iPhone mini guy wants to see mini vehicles. What a shocker.
It's like that's what Jim Farley, I think, was saying in an interview recently, is that he straight up said, in our combustion engine business, the bigger the vehicle, the higher the margin. And with EVs, it's the opposite. That's
crazy.
The smaller, the more efficient they are, the better the margins are. So it's cool to see like a big established automaker actually start acknowledging that they do need to go smaller. They need to develop more compact, more aerodynamic, less frontal area, more efficient EVs, so that they can secure better margins and still hopefully preserve that practicality, which is ultimately what excited me the most about Tello in the first place. Was like, EVs are fundamentally different, and we need to stop acting like we can just build the exact same type of vehicles that we had before and just throw batteries in them. Yeah. In reality, it's a radical rethinking inside to out, which is what Aptera is showcasing. Like, look what we can unlock when we really rethink the way vehicles are built. And Tello similarly is like, yeah, we can deliver similar utility and functionality in a fraction of the footprint. And that's why
I'm so obsessed with the R3, to be honest.
Yeah, that's the R3 is like, well, it's the smallest, it should be the cheapest Rivian.
How dare you tease me for so long, show me, and then I have to wait so long like that? Because I'm so
really
excited.
Stole the thunder.
Like, the R2 is cool.
Don't get me wrong about the R2 because of the
R2 is cool, but R3, oh.
It's really just, I was thinking about it like, oh yeah, we have more storage space. And then I look at the R3 and I'm like, it's still 5 seats. And then it's still a hatchback. It's still got a frunk. It's still got space behind the second row. And I was like, why do I need the R2 exactly? What's the advantage? And it's like, oh, well, you get in the triangle on the back, you get this much extra storage capacity. And I'm like, okay, when am I gonna? I could just pop the glass on the R3. I think some people are.
The R2 is the exact same footprint size of a Model Y, and that's actually good to know, because I wouldn't want to go bigger than a Model Y ever again. No.
If anything, I'm all about how do I get the same utility of a Model Y in a smaller form factor?
Yeah, that's called the Model, or that's called the R3 or R3X.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why I'm like all about how small, how efficient can you get these things, because it comes from an understanding that Americans made vehicles too big, and we need to unlearn. You must unlearn what you have learned.
Yeah, I there's a time and a place if you want to, a measuring contest, so to say, for your vehicles.
Yeah.
Then throw your money at your Fords, Raptors, or whatever. Like, I get it. I don't want
towing. That's going to be the last people to convert to EVs. I'm sure they're going to be driving gas vehicles for the longest.
And like, much like Elon is still using gas to launch his rockets, like, there's a time and a place. And
yeah, for that application, it makes far too much sense. I would not recommend anybody buy an electric truck if they're trying to do long distance towing. It's just right now
when the technology or the batteries and all things with this synergy becomes better and more efficient, when we can make the exact same case that you can do exactly what you're doing with your gas truck towing right here, but for better, longer, faster, and cheaper, then you can have that. Then on paper, off paper, and all things in between, is like, all right, we can make this thing basically obsolete now.
Yeah, it'll take some time. I think we'll get there, but naturally, because EVs are so practical when small and efficient, it makes sense as to why that's going to be the last chapter, because we just don't have the price per kilowatt hour or the weight per kilowatt hour to the point where it needs to be in order for a practical long distance towing electric truck that can recharge really quickly is out there. We don't have the charging infrastructure either. So it's like all these things will come with scale and time, but it's definitely not the first thing you do. It's very much the last thing you tackle. So
the day I'm towing something, I can make this. Yeah, I'll make this proclamation right now. The day I'm towing something is when I have a tiny home attached to it, and I'm just nomading it.
Nice.
That's when I think I'll be ready to tow. Until then, like I'm glad I'm not on that wait list because I don't know what I need to tow, but I would tow a tiny home for sure.
There you go. I hate towing. I've done it. I had to do it a lot at my old job. It's so annoying. It's how you have to back up and how you have to be aware and the hookups of the trailers and get the wheels. It's just I've not found a towing experience I'm happy with, gas or electric.
Yeah. I had a tow for a U-Haul.
Can I avoid towing if at all possible?
Yeah, the U-Haul thing was enough, and I was going cross country back in 2012, and I was like, I'm done. No. I'm never doing this.
Let's try to fit all this in the car, can we? Let's not drag something out the back. It's kind of
that's how I was when I first moved cross country. The very first time in 2008, I put everything in the car and I filled it to the brim, and I said, whatever doesn't fit is not coming. And now I realized that was my first experience and exposure to what we would then call minimalism. I was like, all right, this is what I got.
That'll do it. All right. Well, thanks for your time. We'll catch you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.